What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Stay Hot. Today, we have a very special bonus episode for you today. I'm Blaiden Kirk, joined as always by my two favorite co-hosts of all time in Matthew Sponhour and Theo Ash. And today, we're joined by a man who needs no introduction, former NBA champion, ESPN analyst, as well as the host of Road Trippin with Channing Frye and Allie Clifton, also on the Blue Wire podcast.
Yeah, don't mess that one up. Don't mess that one up.
Of all things to mess up, can't mess up my bosses, you know. Richard Jefferson, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you.
It's so good to be here, guys. What's poppin'? Busy day in basketball. Just a lot of stuff, fun things going on.
Absolutely. I was going to try to think of like something to make fun of you for right off the top here, but I really couldn't think of anything new. I was like I could call him Dick. I could make fun of the tattoo, being bald. And it's like, it's all been done before. So
yeah. And it's honestly, all of those things have made me so much money that like, I still encourage it, you know, and like, that's what you're kind of known for in that space. And it's just like, hey, yeah, more bald jokes. People like bald jokes. That's why you get a ton of followers. And the more followers you get, the more money you get. So Theo, please spend a little bit more time. I would prefer you to even just regurgitate an old joke than to not shoot a shot. Come on.
Man, your tattoo is bad. Jesus Christ.
Thank you.
Could you talk about that? You're from, I can't make fun of you. You went to U of, I'm an ASU guy. You went to U of A. Maybe I can make fun of that, but you know.
No, because we know the truth between Arizona State and Arizona, which one is the actual program. So like, there's not even like, you guys like, well, we have James Harden. And it's like, yeah, but we've been seeing his postseason performances.
Which we'll talk about. But you know, you're from Phoenix though, which is not Tucson. So I actually have never been to Tucson. Like I'm from Minnesota, so people are like, "You hate Tucson now." So
where in Minnesota?
I'm from a town called Northfield, Minnesota, which is about 40 minutes south of the Twin Cities. I doubt you've ever been there.
No. I just want the people to know how obscure of a place that you made it out from. And then,
I made it out of I made it out of the trench.
You should be, you should really, you know, that the Minnesota trap has to be real thick.
I made it from the trenches of Northfield, Minnesota. Yeah, but yeah. Phoenix is a nice place, though. Anyway.
Yeah, Phoenix was great. Phoenix was a great place to grow up. Hot as hell. Tough place to learn how to play basketball outside. You know, in the summer when when your parents just tell you to go outside and play. Well, my parents were sending me out into like 115 degree weather, and I was a basketball player. That's a tough combo, but you know, made me tougher.
It did. That's why you won a ring, and it really came down to that.
Yeah, I think that's it. The sun. Definitely the sun.
Anyway.
What up, Blaiden? How you doing, man?
Oh, you know, not too bad. Just rocking my Sacramento Kings jersey.
Why?
Well, okay. I'm a big fan of De'Aaron Fox.
How old are you?
This guy loves Sacramento.
I'm 21.
You're 21. So how old were you when the last time they made the playoffs?
Here's the thing. I'm not even a Kings fan.
Oh, just De'Aaron.
just De'Aaron Fox, man. Like, that's it.
I wonder, are there more De'Aaron Fox fans or actual Kings fans?
Oh,
that's a good
Blaiden,
one.
you're just like a fan of the city of Sacramento, though.
I do also. Okay, so I visited Sacramento when I was running track. Okay. I visited Sacramento I was like a national track meet, right? And it was 106 degrees 4 days in a row, which is the best weather I've ever experienced.
106?
Yes.
Is that what you said? Oh, wow. Okay.
And ever since then, I've always loved the city of Sacramento.
Well, see, you're not from California, are you?
No, I'm from Columbus, Ohio.
Exactly. Let's just say this. Let's just, people in California, they respect the state capital of Sacramento, and then that's where it stops. That's where it stops. The Sacramento people. No, I'm just joking. Sacramento fans, the city, it definitely has a certain energy about it. But I've seen it when they were rocking, when they had Vlade and Peja and Bibby. That place was one of the crazier places to play.
They still do. Yeah. They're all wasting away in the front office. they still have those guys.
Right. De'Aaron Fox is ready to save the franchise. Either that or they should free him.
Oh, well, no, he's not. He's a very good player, very talented player. But, sometimes you kind of figure out where players kind of fall in their hierarchy, right? There's some guys that can be a 1A. There's some guys that can be a 1B. There's some guys that probably best perform or would be legitimate on a C, D level. And that's not a knock. It's like Drew Holiday. Is Drew Holiday good enough to lead a team to a championship as a number one guy? Probably not. Is he good enough to be the number 2? It's like, ooh. But you put Drew Holiday at the number 3 spot and have Giannis, and now it don't even matter who the hell you got around them. That's a formidable group. So it's like, look, is De'Aaron Fox probably closer to being like a Drew Holiday type, where if he's the 3rd best player on a team, like a Tyrese Maxey, like one of those guys, then you have a damn good team. The problem is that the Sacramento Kings have had him as the best player since the day he showed up.
That is the nicest thing I think anyone has ever said about De'Aaron Fox around me, and I appreciate that.
I don't see that much De'Aaron Fox. I don't know. It's just tough to have him as like.
I never see anybody. I never see anybody talk about De'Aaron Fox except for you. So that's the only thing.
I would argue he's top 3 in my favorite players list.
Top 3. Okay, who are the other 2?
James Harden's up there.
Oh, you're having a tough year. You're having a tough year. They're like, who's your 3rd? Please, if you say like Ben Simmons or
well, I'm a Cavs fan, so who do you think my favorite player is?
Darius Garland?
Well, no, it's LeBron.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, LeBron. That's a. Yeah, man. Listen, man. I'm glad. There's a lot of players that are glad they're not on your list of favorite players right now. I'm not saying there's a jinx, but man, you had a tough year as a fan.
Yeah.
And then there's Matthew Spanauer. I guess we'll go through all 3 of us. Matt's a Hornets fan.
Yeah, Matt's got it real bad.
Yeah, I can tell.
It's getting better. I have some. Yeah, I've put on the Hornets shirt today, but I have some hope for us.
Oh, why do you have hope? Come on.
Well, the way I'm looking at it, teams, small market teams, I got to build through the draft, and right now the Hornets have been drafting really well.
Yeah, but they're getting better, so those drafts are going to be harder.
That's true. That's true.
That's where it starts to get. That's why you got to hit on those top picks. Yeah. You can end up like getting another top pick if your team still sucks because the top pick sucked. But like if you get a guy that you draft a guy at 2 and he's pretty good, you're gonna have to start drafting around the 12, the 10s. So that's where like hitting becomes a little bit harder. But they've done a good job so far.
Yeah. No, Mitch Kupchak's been really good about that. We have 2 more this year. And I think, you already have LaMelo, you already have Miles. They're so young. And then you've got, other guys like Kai Jones and Book Knight. If just one of those dudes can turn out,
this dude, man,
going to be the best they've ever been in my life.
They've been drafting well. We haven't seen their rookies. They never played.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully Borrego's gone, so it might be a little bit different next year. But they do have a problem with actually playing the guys
the bench for another year.
See you guys. I see you guys like to be real aggressive towards each other's fandoms, but no, Charlotte has a chance. But I don't know the 3 head coaching positions, the Lakers, them, and who's the other one that's open?
Oh, I don't know.
Lakers.
I was looking at it just today.
Lakers, Sacramento, and Charlotte. So 2 things that you guys have in common. Both your squads are looking for coaches. And I'm going to say your squad because you're a De'Aaron Fox fan.
Yeah,
Which job do you think is the better job?
That's a tough one. I feel like with the Lakers, you maybe have less control, but it's the Lakers and you're in LA. So my gut would say that. The Hornets probably have, they're really young and really talented. Like you could see a coach like D'Antoni wanting to coach up LaMelo, and I'd say Sacramento's probably 3rd.
So I think he could definitely lift LaMelo and lift the run and gun, but that to me means that he's just a stopgap until you can bring in the guy. Right. The only problem is you're going to try and bring in the guy after D'Antoni sets forward these very, let's say, hard to break habits. Right. So like LaMelo might all of a sudden become another MVP under D'Antoni and they're scoring 140 points a game and they lose in the second round or they maybe make the conference finals. Then all of a sudden you have this like high powered and you're like D'Antoni has never won. And that's not a knock on him. I think he's an amazing coach. But at this point in time, like, if you believe that you have a championship team, like D'Antoni's not the guy to call. D'Antoni's the guy to call when you're ready to raise people's levels. And that's what he does a great job of. So good luck with that.
That's my concern is that maybe the goal right now is just getting it to where LaMelo likes the offense so he'll stay. I'm kind of worried. Like, people are going to talk about LaMelo going to the Lakers for the sake of talking about
Let me say that. Let me stop this. Just really quickly, Matt. How many players have not signed the rookie extension?
That's true.
Okay,
it's
so just like Zion, you heard Zion go, "Hey, yeah, anybody want to offer me money? Like if they want to offer me, I'll take it." So don't stress about him. So take that thought out. Just stress about how trash your team is. Don't stress about him leaving. Okay.
I would say maybe part of the reason why we did fire Borrego is I feel like a lot of times the Hornets' whole goal is just to go as fast as possible. And that's cool. And they're built to do that, right? Like with LaMelo and Miles, like, yeah, the fast break's going to be good. And, they're drafting around that. Like Kai Jones is definitely another dude who I think will be good on the fast break when it gets to that. But that can't be what you do. That can't be the whole game plan. So I wonder if just another coach who's maybe not, the same as Borrego, but is focused really on just the speed aspect. And obviously, when defense is our biggest problem right now, maybe D'Antoni's not the best option, but I also feel like the defensive personnel is what's holding back the Hornets defense, maybe more than coaching.
Yeah, but they shouldn't have been where they were. They shouldn't have been.
No, I agree. They shouldn't have been that.
Even though they were better than they had been, and they were progressing. Some of that is because of natural talent development, which was a positive thing. Like Bridges, they did not know Bridges was going to be this good. Every year, this dude showed up and got better, and they were like, "How?" A lot of it has to do with LaMelo Ball. LaMelo Ball is like those guards that, when you play with him, he's an energy guy. He's a feel-good guy. He's a sharer. He's a highlight guy. Those guys are in the same mold of the Jason Kidds, the Magic Johnsons, to a different way, like a LeBron James. When you look at just their energy that they play with, guys are going to play better playing with him, right? Like, and Chris Paul's one of those guys. Chris Paul's more of like a,
not in the same way.
Not in the same way, but not like a happy energy, right? Like an iron. Chris Paul's like an iron fist military school type shit. And it's great. That's why he's a Hall of Famer. And but it's like, there's a difference when playing with like those high energy, like kind of fun guys.
Yeah. I do think that like with Miles, they should have extended him last year. Because I thought that he showed that improvement in the last half of the season. I guess they got worried about getting locked into contracts, so that's how they got themselves in trouble in 2016.
They messed themselves up. They messed themselves up.
But it's not the same. I think a lot of Hornets fans are worried about that. They're going to get locked in the contracts, but it's not the same because that team was all a bunch of role players who were kind of where they were, and this team's so young.
Well, and there was
a salary about it.
Yeah, but there's a salary cap bump. There was a salary cap bump that teams had to get to the floor. They had to get to the floor, so teams just started paying people because it's like they had to give the money away. Like people can look at like the terrible contracts. The way the basketball money splits is 50% based. Basically, around 50% goes to the owner, 50% goes to the players. So if there's a huge $1 billion that's added because of a new TV deal, that money has to go to the players. And whoever's up for contracts, they just get it because it has to be spent. And there was a rule that they were going to try and incrementally do it so that like guys that were under contract for 2 more years could also, but then players were like, no, screw that. We want all the money all right now. Dumb part for us is you shouldn't have done that because that's why you had those 1 year bloated contracts that were just like the rest of the teams were killing teams after that. Mainly because the players said we wanted our money. Stupid.
Yeah.
And it's funny because, the Hornets are probably the number 1 team that messed themselves up that offseason.
Lakers
were probably number 2.
Lakers, yeah.
Mitch Kupchak.
Luol Deng and Mitch Kupchak and
Mozgov.
Timothy Mozgov. Ooh, those contracts. I think they might still be paying Luol Deng. Maybe this was the last year.
I think this is I know the Hornets are still paying Batum. This is the last season that he has on dead cap. He's got $8 million, but
Batum's pretty good. Yeah.
He was good when there was a point in time where Batum was a very legit player.
Yeah.
But it got to the point where we were paying him like $30 million. He wasn't even getting on the floor.
Yeah. He wasn't that guy.
Instead of talking about we could talk about the Hornets all day, and as much as I would love to,
I was about to say, Theo, like,
guys, this is an open format, guys. You can just fucking jump in at any point in time and just tell me and Matt to shut up.
I wanted to jump in when you were talking about D'Antoni, because you were saying like he's someone who can elevate you, get you a lot of wins in the regular season, but come playoff time, he's like consistently been a second round exit. And I wanted to ask you, as someone who's done it, like, what is that? You know, when a player is a regular season player and then they never win in the playoffs, like, how do you view that? How is game planning different in the playoffs? And is it fair to hold some guys, like I know Westbrook is one, and whenever a good player loses early in the playoffs, is it fair to like kind of ignore the regular season for a lot of it and put the playoffs on this crazy high pedestal?
Or Rudy Gobert,
someone like Gobert. I hate Gobert, please tell me. Please say that he's a fraud.
So there's different levels of respect and disrespect, right? There's different levels. And so it's like when you look at players like, dude, I'm not going to disrespect Rudy Gobert. This dude's a 3-time defensive player of the year. That means he was the fucking baddest defensive guy out on the planet for all 82 games. But the problem is, when you get to the postseason, it can be matchup based. It can be bad matchups. There are teams now. It's not the same. So a player can be like phased out of a series. And as much as he's trying to do his best, when you can sit and strategize, and that's where you start to really see like geniuses, right? Whether it's the same players, the same coaches, once you see like all of the same people in the postseason, it's because those are the brains that have figured it out, or their bodies or whatever. That's why it was Jordan for those years, and LeBron, and like it's the same usual suspects. It feels like Kobe and Shaq, like one or the other. You know what I'm saying? Because those guys were so good. So like for a guy like Westbrook to get an MVP and then have a subpar season this year, like people make it seem like he was the worst basketball player ever. And you're like, no, this dude has been a monster for, since he took UCLA to the Final Four. Right. Like this guy has been a monster for 15 years, and he had a crappy year. It happens. But it was just, the regular season, the postseason is just like, that's the elite of the elite. Right. Like people always say, oh, the game slows down in the postseason. That's not true. It slows down because good teams don't turn over the ball. Good teams get back on defense. You know what I'm saying? So the game slows down because you're only playing against good teams. People make it seem like it's a deliberate, or teams don't want a fast break, or teams don't want to do any of that stuff. Or it's like, oh, it's the playoffs, we like to play at a slower pace. It's like, no, like if you're playing against good teams, like go look at Boston. Boston looked like they were the gods of the NBA when they swept the Nets, and the defense that they played on Kevin Durant was like that of like, it was going to be in like basketball textbooks till the fucking dawn of time. Then they go against Giannis, who's like, hello, my name is Giannis and I am going to eat. It was just like, that was my terrible Giannis accent.
That was really bad.
No. I was trying to do a combination of like Giannis and like Drago from Rocky IV, and it was really bad. But I'm just saying though, it's like, things can happen. Now, all of a sudden, if Giannis just dominates the Boston Celtics and they lose 5-1, does that mean that the Boston Celtics weren't ridiculous this year? No, it meant they lost probably the best player in the world, right? So it's like the playoffs are just a different mental, emotional, and physical monster. And so it's hard to judge people negatively unless you've seen them just crumble in like the biggest of moments, which we see that often too.
So people overreact to, one postseason, because sometimes you just have like a bad series and it can happen. But with a Rudy Gobert type player, you've seen the Jazz struggle with that, and you've seen teams want to match up against him over and over and over. So I do think it kind of changes the perspective. I understand if someone thinks he's not the best defender in the league, even though he has 3 defensive player of the years.
Yeah. Well, the defensive player of the year, so let me say this. Defensive player of the year is not always an individual defender, like a Marcus Smart. But understand this. The Utah Jazz will be number 1 or number 2 or number 3. Typically in the years he wins, they're either number 1 or number 2. So they'll be that. Then he'll be top 3 in the league in shot blocking, if not number 1. Top 3 in the league in rebounding, if not 1, 2, or 3. He'll be somewhere in those spaces. That's how he's got the award. But the flip side about this is, understand this. The Utah Jazz's defense, if they are in the top 3, all of that our number one is predicated on sending every player to Rudy Gobert. We're going to send every player all year long to that dude. And what did it do? It got us the number one defense in the league. That's how you get it. It doesn't mean he's a great individual defender, but come postseason when it's 7 games and you can sit and focus and do all of those things and you have like 10 days to play a series, you can key in on one person. And if a guy hits a ton of threes and corner shots, then you got to tip your hat to him, right? So you can't discredit somebody in the postseason because teams are able to strategize in a better way. It does kind of limit your long-term dominance in championship. Like, can Rudy Gobert be the starting center on a championship team? I think so, but he can't have the same makeup of a Donovan Mitchell and this. Like, Donovan Mitchell is a top 20 player in the league, in my opinion. Maybe Rudy Gobert needs a top 10 player. I'm pretty sure Luka wouldn't mind having him on his team. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it just becomes like maybe he needs a little bit better of a player around him. And that's not a knock to either of those two players. I think Donovan Mitchell, maybe he needs, instead of having Rudy Gobert, maybe he needs to go find his Chris Middleton. Maybe he needs to go find, a wing player that like is on par with him to go make a different type of run.
And that's the thing about building a championship team is finding that one. Like, there's a lot of great players in the league, like Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, but the number of guys in the last 40 years that have been the number one player on a championship team is low. It's all. Yeah, you have to be one of the best 5 players, and even then,
yeah, there's not many. What you got, Theo?
I was going to say, like, that kind of brings us to our first series that we were planning on talking about, which is Bucks versus Celtics. And I picked the Celtics to win this series, but like after watching game 1, I think about, how it usually is kind of the same cast of characters you see in the finals all the time, whether that be, LeBron making it for 8 straight years or the Warriors with KD and Curry, or, before that, the Spurs. And I'm beginning to think, like, is Giannis the guy that you just pencil in out of the East every single year? Is he that caliber guy where it's just like, man, you have him, it's just like you just can't beat him? And
Theo, you and I got totally different things from watching that game. You got from that game that, oh, Giannis is him.
Yes.
And I got from that game.
Well, not just that. I'm a son. I mean, Giannis, yeah.
I got from that game the Celtics played bad and only lost by 12.
I mean, 12 is a lot, man. And like 12, the points in the
12, I feel like 12 isn't that, like 12 is salvageable.
I mean, they scored 89 points. They just could not get to the paint at all. They could not score there. And it's like, man, I don't know if that's going to get better when you've got a guy like Giannis there.
Okay, a couple things, Theo. One, you got to have more faith in yourself. You got to believe in yourself. If you are a person that is going to panic after one game, you shouldn't be getting picks. Okay. I believe in you. I believe in you, Theo. So like, you have to say this. Let me teach you a little analyst work. I believe the Boston Celtics are going to win this series. They didn't do what they were supposed to in game 1 because of X, Y, and Z. I'm not wrong. They're wrong. Right? They're wrong because they didn't do what I told them to. Right, Theo? That's a little analyst trick, okay? I shouldn't be giving out these trade secrets. So next is we're going to address this. I don't know if we're going to see a run like what LeBron did. 8 in a row, 2 different teams, 4 straight. Like, if there was a dude, Giannis could be that dude because he's young enough, he's dominant enough. There is no true way to guard him because he's just so... Just like all the greats are like have a combination of like physical or basketball traits that just make this absurd. It's like you think that God couldn't build a bigger, faster, like basketball specimen than LeBron James. And like 8 seconds later, here comes freaking Giannis. Right. And you're like, what on earth is this? How do we guard this? What? He doesn't shoot, but like he's a point guard that's 6'11" and the most athletic with an 8-foot wingspan. What do we do with this? So like Giannis would be that dude. Let me say this about Boston. What people didn't really see is like the Brooklyn Nets, they were not. They were like the names were great. It's like you ever see your 2 favorite actors in a terrible movie? Right? It's not that they can't act, but it's just like the movie, the script, all of this, they should have not done this movie, right? They should have not done this movie. And everybody can think of one where you're like, my favorite actor did one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
What is it?
So like, I don't know. I can't.
Oh, you're just making it up. Okay.
I'm making it up.
I
Generalities.
I was okay. I was just wondering if you had one in mind.
I'm messing with you, Theo. I
get the analogy though. I understand.
Okay. But the whole point of it is more of that, like, the Brooklyn Nets weren't that good. They had a ton of talent, but they didn't play good basketball. They weren't they weren't as disciplined, and some of that was a continuity and all that other stuff, blah, blah, blah.
They weren't really a team in the same sense that, like,
and then
the
they
Bucks
didn't have
the
Ben
Celtics
Simmons,
are.
and they didn't have the James Harden, the guy that they have salary cap space for, right? He wasn't on their roster. So Boston, you can't really judge them off dominating the Brooklyn Nets just because they dominated guys that were playing a ton of one-on-one basketball, right? And they're a great team. This team has the same ability, except they're a team. They've played together for multiple years. They're all pushing in the same direction. There's no other things going on. There's no coaching things. It's just a team that knows how to win and to keep doing it. So we can't judge Boston in this series based off of their performance in the prior series, because it's so drastically different, right? So drastically. Miami going against Trae Young, but then a big one-on-one guy, and then Miami going against James Harden, who's got to dominate now one-on-one. Miami's seen the story before. Yeah, they're different players, but ultimately the way they like handle the ball and do that, they're like, oh, we've seen this story before, right? So Miami going against Toronto and Philly, same thing. Boston going against Brooklyn and then Milwaukee, those are two different books, two different translations. It's Greek and Spanish. So like, don't worry about Boston. You got to keep your faith and don't stress out over one game.
I don't know. That kind of all made me think that I should be worried about Boston. that all made me like less confident in them.
If they don't win tonight, the series is over.
Okay, thank you. Okay, yeah.
You also just made me less. I picked the Sixers,
and there's no Marcus. And there's no Marcus Smart.
The Sixers to do, but you did not know without Joel Embiid.
I didn't know they weren't going to have Joel Embiid. But here's my thought. I do have a vision for how they could somehow pull this out.
Share
Harden and Harden and Maxey. I thought at the end of their last series, I thought they did a pretty good job of meshing together. I don't think the Harden Embiid connection is quite there, and I think that's their biggest problem. But I think if you can get Harden and Maxey, because Harden, is there going to be a game where both Harden and Maxey are going to be off? Like other than the last game? Don't look at me like that, man. Like, come on. I'm just saying, if you can get James Harden to facilitate a little bit more, spread the ball around.
One of the hardest parts about facilitating is his facilitating is also predicated on him getting by his guy and getting into the paint and causing problems on defense. If you can't get by your guy, which his first step is struggling, and I'm not saying that. The numbers are saying that.
Yeah.
There's been a decline 4 straight years from 36 to 34 to maybe 25 and to 22. So it's like there is a decline. And if you can't get by your first defender, for instance, Kevin Durant struggled with Boston's physicality, right? Because he would get by one, there's another guy there, but he still has the ability to pull up, but he struggled. Giannis, he gets by the first defender, bullies the second defender, and then gets an and one on the third defender, right? That's why it's different for Boston. And Boston has to tweak what they're doing. I think Boston will figure it out. I don't think they're going to get swept or anything. But like James Harden, he used to be able to bully past that first defender, cross the crap out of him, and then bully the next guy or make the right pass all day. That's why he was 40 and 10,
right?
50 and 10. Did he have a 60-point triple-double? Something crazy. So it's like James Harden is struggling to get past that first defender. So it's making his ability to play make that much harder.
I saw a video, I think Kevin O'Connor put it together. I think that was him of like his first step and him trying to get into the paint and beat his guy just side by side, him on the Rockets and him now. And like his leaping ability and his vert is just so clearly not what it once was. And it's sad. It's tough to see.
Theo, it's tough to see, but it's like and this is with real respect to James Harden, it's like, every player wishes that on their decline in their early 30s, they were averaging 18 and or 22 and 9, right? It's
Right,
like those are my best years in my prime at like 25 years old. That was like my dream numbers. Like, so that just shows you how good he is. And I think he's got more in him.
It's just tough because the expectations are so high for Harden. They're not just to be like a good, aging, declining veteran. It's to be like right now, it's to be the best player on a team and go like beat the Heat in the series or go get a win.
The expectation for James Harden is to be the best scorer ever. Like
James Harden should also be in his prime right now. That's where it's a little. We're not talking like you look at what Chris Paul's doing at his age. You look at what LeBron James is doing at his age. So when you look at some of these greats that have played, and he's in his early 30s, right? And like he was 8 seconds away. Like the Brooklyn Nets were about to offer him a 4 or 5 year max contract. So like whoever they were about to offer like a 5 year max deal, right? Now, would anybody in this room offer James Harden a 5 year max deal, seeing his 4 year decline?
He's an ASU alum, so yes.
Okay, that's fair, Theo.
He's one of my favorite players ever. So yeah,
I would not.
You're the GM. You're the GM, right? Now your listeners. You guys got your listeners now. They're gonna want you to tell the truth. Would any of you guys, as the GM, give James Harden a 5 year max deal?
No, but
you're not.
It's a big mistake to trade, a pretty big package for James Harden, and then I guess Ben was,
but you had to let. No, I'm not saying let him walk, because you can still do sign and trade. So like teams that might not have the salary cap might be able to sign. So you might be able to sign him in Philly and trade him, so you can get some assets back, maybe some picks, whatever it is to make the money work. So that you can get a little something for him, but it just. I look at that, and if he continues this decline, you will be paying him $50 to $100 million with 2 years left on that deal, and he might not be averaging 20.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think he just doesn't. One part of it is like you mentioned, like Chris Paul and LeBron James as guys who have kept it at a high level even despite their age. But it's like Harden, I just don't think he takes care of his body in quite the same way as those guys do. I don't know the guy personally.
No one takes care of their body the way like LeBron and Brady do. Yeah, they're on another planet when it comes to
this. They are on other planets. And I can't look, if I haven't partied with you, if I haven't been on the same team as you, so I can't speak on that. What I will say is there is a quote unquote reputation that he enjoys himself, right? That could be inaccurate. Like it's never perfect, and we forget this. When he was enjoying himself, he was averaging 34 points a game. It wasn't like he was going out and being that dude. And it goes, man, you can do what you want when you're popping. Right. But it's like the minute you start to struggle, people want to question every single thing that you're doing. So I'm not going to question that. I just wonder if he's doing everything he can to be the best physical version of himself.
Do you think he put a fat suit on to get out of Houston?
I think for players of that caliber, like it's like wrestlers. They know how to drop weight. Right. He's a big boy, too. So like gaining 10 pounds, 15 pounds, losing 10, 15 pounds, that can be done in a week. That can be done. And I'm not saying healthily. I'm not saying like in a proper way. But if you gave most athletes 10 days, they could lose 10 pounds because they'll just work out 3-4 times a day, cut their calories, eat only the right things at the right time, no drinking, no nothing. And if you're used to working out 5-6 hours a day, that's all you got to do. And then just cut your calorie back. Especially when you're in the prime of your career, the weight will just fall off of you.
Right. Cool. Yes. Yeah. Okay. That makes more sense. Then
you get that.
Yeah. That makes more sense than the whole fat suit thing. I was hoping that you'd say like, yes, he told me that he did.
That doesn't even, what kills me about that too, is that I feel like if you were to all of a sudden be out of shape, it would make other teams less likely to want to trade for you. So I don't even know if it helps you leave that much. I think holding out would just be the easier way to do that.
Yeah. Well,
not show up.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough for a guy like James though, because like teams know that he's available.
Right. At any rate.
Right. Yeah.
The Heat 76ers series. My Heat were my pick before the season to win the whole thing, or not win the whole thing, make it out of the East. That was my pick for them.
Okay. I like that, Theo.
That was my take before the season, and I just liked, obviously Spoelstra is a genius coach, and I think there's two ways to kind of make it to the finals. One is have a generationally, like, once in a lifetime athlete like a LeBron or a Steph Curry, and the other way is just like try to mimic the Spurs like as much as possible, like the old Spurs teams like as much as possible. So, and the Suns are in that mold, I think, right now. And I looked at the Heat, and I'm like, I think the Heat can be the Suns. Like, so many like champions on that roster, and so many guys who's either won or been deep into the playoffs, and their defense is going to be really good. So they were my pick before the season, and I've stuck with it. They're going on with the 76ers right now. They're up 1-0. Embiid is hurt like he always is. That's the other thing about some guys is like some guys like Embiid, like, oh, you couldn't predict Embiid getting hurt. You know, you would think that they would go through the whole playoff series with Embiid. It's just not smart to think that about some guys. I think some guys just are like Zion some guys just tough. Get hurt all the time. And, you know, so the Heat 76ers, I don't know what your pick was going into the series, but do you think the 76ers have any shot in this one, or do you think it's going to be
not without James playing at a level that he has to achieve? And there's nothing that has shown us that. And this is not like my opinion. This is not like, these are just the factual numbers, right? Like, no gambler is out there betting on James Harden to go have 30. Not a smart one, right? Because he's had 11 straight games of under 25 points a game. This is a guy, for instance, 2 seasons ago, averaged 33 points a game, and 4 seasons ago averaged 36 points a game. Right. And this is a guy that now today has played 11 straight postseason games without cracking the 25 point a game mark. So this is not a criticism. It's an observation, right? That he is just not currently right now. Now he could be injured. He could just be, you know, all of the different changes and needing to sit in the summer and just work and train, whatever it is. He's just not that dude right now for the first time in about a decade.
Can we also observe that James Harden has also had some of the worst playoff luck ever? Like Chris Paul losses or luck?
Yes.
Like Chris Paul getting hurt, like awful. And now, like, the one time he has like another chance to have like a decent team around him that doesn't all hate each other, the best player is hurt.
Yeah, that's another reason why it's so sad to see him like this is like, man, it kind of looks like he'll never, like, he's one of the best players of the era, and it just probably, I don't know if it'll go
hasn't
down
really
like
worked out for him quite the way it needs
Breaks
to.
my heart.
Well, I agree. And look, I'm not going to tell him where to stay though, but like, man, could you imagine if Brooklyn would have had him?
Yeah.
Man.
And that was their big thing too, is that they had a problem moving the ball around. I thought that they just got too stuck in maybe a little bit too much ISO ball, or I got to go get this bucket. And Harden is the one guy. You know, I thought this too. It's like, well, they have enough offensive firepower without Harden. It's not a big deal. It'll be okay. But missing that playmaking definitely killed him. So I wonder if he really put himself in a better situation.
Yeah, he did.
What do you think about Doc Rivers? I know that he had a press conference the other day where he ran down all of his like blown leads and was like, that one's not my fault. Like, that one wasn't on me.
I think he's very frustrated right now.
He's very, very frustrated right now. Do you think like it's valid? Like, who do you think is right there? Like Doc Rivers, like he is like one of the best coaches, and you know he's right to say, you know, all these things weren't my fault. Or do you think like, yeah, Doc, you are what your record is?
You are what your record is, but there is times where like you might overachieve. Like his team overachieved and was up 3-1 against the number 1 seed. Right, against the number 1 seed, they overachieved. They had a great player in T-Mac. So it's like if Dallas were to go up 3-1 against this Phoenix Suns team, and then the best team in basketball that go and went on and win a championship, right? If they come back, it's like, look, KD, Kevin Durant, right, and the Golden State against Golden State were up 3-1, right, in Oklahoma City. So like, it happens to the greatest players, the greatest teams, the greatest coaches. All of that does happen. But within that, you have to look at the story. What happened? You have injuries. You had a team that actually probably shouldn't have gone up 3-1 and then lost 3 straight because the best team turned up the fucking heat because they were about to get eliminated, and then they went on and won a championship. So there's always more in the story than just stats. And people that just want to focus in on stats, which the internet has created that, and advanced statistics have created that. So now everybody wants to fucking point to what they're on Tuesdays he shoots 18% going to his left when they're wearing the purple uniforms. It's like, bro, like, we get it, man. Like, my eyes can see he's good at that. And so you have to use more of the storytelling element than just to break down, oh, he's got multiple 3-1 losses. You know?
What do you think about the DeAndre Jordan stuff? Because a lot of people are clamoring for him not to play, and I think it's partially, you know, it really sucks you don't have maybe a backup big that wouldn't get played off the court in a lot of different playoff series with Embiid out. But at the same time, I mean, dude, maybe you got to try out Paul Reed at the 5. Maybe you got to go small ball because
you're gonna try.
It wasn't working game 1.
Yeah, Matt, you don't freak out after game 1. Again, Rudy Gobert has been played off the court, and this dude's a Hall of Fame player, right? And so it can be tough, difficult. I will say that was one of the effects of the trade. Like, Drummond was probably the best backup center in the league, him and JaVale McGee, in my opinion. So now Drummond, who was backing up Embiid, at least gave you a roll threat, a big body, would do something, right? And DeAndre, no disrespect, DeAndre, you can see the decline. I felt the decline. DeAndre is a much, much older player. He doesn't have nearly as much. But part of the reason why they were playing DeAndre is they were trying to get James in a pick and roll to see if James could do something. Why did they need to do that? Because James is having trouble breaking players down one-on-one. So because James is struggling to break players down one-on-one, they have to play a big that you can't just switch across the board on. So then they play DeAndre Jordan. Only problem is DeAndre Jordan is not as dominant as he once is. So now you roll a screen roll with 2 guys that don't look like they're in like their peak best version of themselves against the Miami Heat. That is
right.
Tough.
They can't match the playoff intensity, and it's killing them.
Now, if you had the pick and roll of James Harden and Joel Embiid, that's a much different problem. But you don't, and it's actually going to affect James so much more.
I just don't know if it's worth. I mean, you got to get Harden going, I get, but I don't know if it's worth what it does to you on defense to put Jordan out there. I mean, you don't want to panic after one game. You see in the Grizzlies series, right? They play Steven Adams first game, and Steven Adams is a really good player.
But Steven Adams
wasn't working in that matchup.
Yeah, he couldn't play in that series. He couldn't play.
No, and taking him out after one game was the right call, 100%.
Yeah, and you saw Jaren Jackson struggled to play in that series. Was in foul trouble, didn't score a ton. Like, that was a tough series for a more mobile big, more athletic big in Jaren Jackson. That just shows you, like, Steven Adams not playing in that series, that was the right one.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's kind of the same thing with DeAndre Jordan. I mean, to me, it's just like, man, dude, you just, what do you do? Like, I get that. Yeah. Like, yeah, it's defense. You watch him, like, you can break him down off the dribble like so easily, and he's not even like an enforcer at the rim anymore. So it's like, yeah, that's the most obvious part too, to like a viewer or like me watching who doesn't know like so many of the interest. Never mind.
You can't even say the words.
I can't even say the fucking words. So how am I supposed to like know what intricacies?
Come on, do it. Let's do it. Oh my! There we go. We got
intricacies. Intricacies.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, the intricacies of intricacy.
The intricacies of the intricacies. But like, yeah, man, it's like when it's so obvious, like, oh my God, DeAndre, you're getting, cooked over and over again. And then you got Doc Rivers out here like it or not, we're playing Jordan, and then on top of that,
because he's like,
oh man, the optics is so bad.
Because Doc. you know what he can't say. You know what Doc can't say. He was like, I gotta play DeAndre because I need somebody to set a screen because James Harden can't beat his guy off one-on-one. What do you want me to do? Like that's what that's what Doc Rivers is really saying. He's like, we're going to try and do that because I got to get James going. And James is not going to get going playing one-on-one because he's not playing one-on-one the way we've seen him play the last 3-4 years. So what do you want me to do? That's why he gets sensitive as a coach. It's like, I get it. You guys want me to create something. I was expecting to have my MVP player in Joel Embiid with James Harden being my second best player and a good Tyrese Maxey and Tobias Harris played well. Right. That's what I was expecting. Hey, look, you take Giannis off of the Bucks, you're not going to judge Bud for his lack of adjustments. You're going to be like, damn, that sucks. He doesn't have Giannis. That's all you would say. That would be the end of the conversation. Not like, oh, these adjustments that he needs to make and blah, blah, blah. You're like, bro, you can't judge a coach. Like, you can, but ultimately, you know that without Joel Embiid, especially in this round, even if they were hypothetically able to move on, they weren't going to keep winning without Joel.
I don't think that people necessarily have a problem with, like, okay, if they lose a series, yeah, you don't have Embiid. Like, what are you going to do? But that I think people still want to see the Jordan adjustment because Harden didn't get going last game with Jordan on the court. And the defense, even if he did, I'd rather go to like Harris and Maxey and try to make that work because I know with Jordan on the court, the defense isn't going to be good enough. And it's not necessarily about winning or losing, but you can see that is not working and people want to at least see the adjustment attempted.
Oh yeah. And there will, like, for people that want to start coaching after game ones, right? It's like, you always tell like, everybody slow down, right? Because sometimes you can look at it and be like, it wasn't that we were cooking. We weren't doing our assignments. And a coach will walk in and be like, oh, so everybody wants to change the game plan. Okay, well, let's look at 10 times that we didn't follow the game plan. We didn't give the game plan an actual chance. He's like, look, in this pick and roll, hey, look, James, did we run this play right? Hey, look, this is what we did, blah, 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 blah. So if you look at those moments, a lot of times it's not always just about like, oh, is the game plan not working, or did the guys follow the game plan to the way it was supposed to be? And some teams are so good they can take you out of your game plan, but coaches have a very unique way of looking at it and be like, we don't need to change it because we just didn't do a good job of it in the first time.
Right. But it's also like, are you going to expect to get results with DeAndre and Harden that way? So like, so maybe that's the other side of it where it's like, well, how did you expect to actually get results with that strategy?
They look, when you lose the MVP, you're searching, you're grasping for straws at that point in time. And it's like, well, we got to get James going. So what do? Well, let's play DeAndre. So like maybe he can set some screens, maybe he can throw a lob, maybe he can do something that'll open up every guy. Because if you just try and go all 5 smalls, you know what happens? Think about this. Any screen or any action, what happens? You switch, right?
Yeah.
You switch. Now you switch. Now, stay with me here. So if they're like, okay, let's play 5 smalls, right? Or whatever, or something like with Reed or somebody like that. If they switch down the line, the way James is playing, does it look like he can get past Jimmy Butler? Is it look like he can get past PJ Tucker? Is it looking like he can get past Bam Adebayo? He's not looking like he can go past those guys. So like now you're like, well, geez, if we put 5 guys out there and they're switch across the board, that's going to require James to play one-on-one. Does it look like James can play one-on-one like that? No, it doesn't look like James. No, it doesn't look like he can play one-on-one like that. So it's like, shit, we got to run a pick and roll. Well, the pick and roll is not working. It's like, well, plan A and plan B both suck. You know what's going to happen? We're probably going to lose. Yeah, like if plan A and plan B both suck, we're probably going to lose. Ain't shit my fault. That's what Doc Rivers is saying.
You've been saying they've lost the MVP, Joel Embiid. Is he, if you had an MVP, I don't know, do you have an MVP vote? I don't know.
No, I don't. He should be. I think he should be the MVP. Yes. I think he should. I think Jokic, outstanding. I think there should be an offensive player of the year, and I think there should be an MVP. I think people were so enamored with Jokic's numbers, but the same narrative falls, right? It was, he did this without all of those guys. Yeah. And last year he held on and they finished 3rd. And that's what's part of the reason why that helped build his case for MVP. This year they show up and they're 6th. So, because it's like, yo, we get he can put up these amazing numbers, but like, how many times in history have we given the MVP to somebody, and especially the back-to-back MVPs, right? Like, let's not just back-to-back MVPs ain't about stats, people. We're talking about Steve Nash, who got better, and their team were both number ones. Tim Duncan, right? Team number 1. Michael Jordan's back-to-back. LeBron James, team's number 1. Steph Curry, team's number 1. And now all of a sudden we want to get back-to-back MVPs to the guy with the best stats? Like, come on. That's where when I tell you that stats start to like mess up the game, that's where it's not that he's not deserving. 5 guys every year are deserving of the MVP.
I don't think the reason why the award went to Jokic is because his numbers were the best. I think it's because people think that he did more to help his team win than like all the other guys, which obviously it's really close. And the reason why he maybe had a few less wins is because his supporting cast was significantly worse. Embiid was a 4 seed. That's also an incredibly low, almost never happens seed for a team to be.
Agreed. And when I say stats, it means that because he is like the embodiment of their offense, he's getting everyone involved, assists, he's getting rebounds, he's scoring 30 points, he's doing all of these things. So when I say stats, it's not just, I mean, it's like, it's the accumulation. It wasn't like he Embiid led the league in scoring, had the most 40 in 10 games, like all these things, blah, blah, blah. And on top of it, they were in a much more difficult conference. We can look and say that the Eastern Conference was a better conference top to bottom than the Western Conference. So again, the defending champs were in that conference, Miami, Boston, like all those teams. Look how good Cleveland was, and they didn't make the postseason. Like Cleveland was 4 at the All-Star break, 6 all year, had a ton of injuries, stumbled into 7 and lost 2 games. And they lost to Trae Young and these teams that were like in the conference finals last year. The Eastern Conference was far better. So to say 4 in the Eastern Conference when it's by far the best one, that seems like, again, that just adds more weight to Joel Embiid. In my opinion, I know there's a lot of Jokic people out there.
We're Jokic people, sadly.
I support Jokic.
I think like
the difference in wins.
Show me another time in history that we just gave it to the best offensive like performance of the year. Right? Well, show me any time in history a back-to-back MVP has done it with finishing 3rd and then following up finishing 6th. To me, that sets a bad precedence.
But show me another time that a guy has led his team to almost 50 wins with his 2nd and 3rd option who are on max contracts out. It's definitely an exception that's being made for Jokic, but it's a situation worthy of an exception.
But I don't want to give people credit because this is you. Okay, another example. Do you know why you guys know a history of like when teams when players win MVPs? You know how they give them their team and they give all their players on their team an award, like a watch or a thank you, right? Because the MVP is also a team award. It's also a team award. That means everyone did the things that they were supposed to do. Everyone was in shape. Everyone did all the things that allowed us to be the best team in the NBA, and I was the best player on the best team, and that's why I won the MVP. Right.
That's
so
Booker,
it is,
right?
No, but like Booker, people want to make an argument for Booker and his stats. And yes, Booker, I don't personally think that if you look at how the MVP runs the ship, Giannis runs the ship, Jokic runs the ship, Embiid runs the ship, Bron runs the ship. It is everything. Chris Paul runs the ship, but Devin Booker is the statistical monster on the team and is their like best player. So that's where those two guys are split. Chris Paul and Devin Booker combined is Jokic or Embiid or, so that's where it gets a little skewed when you look at the dominance of those guys. I love Jokic. He's one of the best players I ever played with, ever seen in my entire life. I'm not that. I just look at it. Now it can be forever used in a way that's like, well, look, this guy got hurt and look at his stats. We would assume that they would have 60 wins if this played. So this is why, and look at what they did. They got to the 5th spot and now they should be the MVP. And it's like, bro, that's not the way we've ever done MVPs. And going back to the Jordan, Magics, Larry's, that's never been done that way. So why now?
And I think it's because the award, like how people want to give it out, is changing.
Yeah,
saying that the most valuable player is always on the number 1 seed, I think is wrong. I don't think necessarily like an individual player can be the most valuable, gain their teams the most number of wins without being on the best team, because that involves a lot of the team around them. And for an individual award, it's worked like that for a long time, but seeing that shift isn't necessarly wrong.
No, but that's why there should be an offensive player and offensive MVP, and there should be, because Joel Embiid was the MVP, and I think Jokic was the best offensive player this year. What'd you say?
I might switch that around. Although Embiid
that's something we've talked about a lot on this podcast, which is like the MVP is kind of labeled currently as just like the most outstanding player. as opposed to like the most valuable player?
I think Jokic winning it is really most valuable player. I think it's really just wins added, and people are saying Jokic had the most.
Yeah, but think about that over the 8 years that LeBron was going to the finals. Was he the most valuable player on every one of those damn teams? Even if they didn't finish one, even if they didn't finish two, damn right that dude was. And I know he won like multiple MVPs and stuff. But there are multiple years where like you would say that, oh, he probably should have one or two more, right? Like he should have one or two more, where if we were to use this same statistical, like the year that Derrick Rose won it, right? And they gave him the MVP because they were the number one seed and he was the best player and he was having an epic year. Was he having a better year than LeBron James? He was having a newer year. Where it was like, we hadn't seen this before. Right. And even Russell Westbrook's MVP falls into that line, too. He did something that we had never statistically seen in the history of the game of basketball, or not history, in the last like 50 years.
And I think when we look back at those, we kind of view it as mistakes. And I feel like we've almost corrected that if it goes to Jokic.
If you ask a lot of people if Derrick Rose deserved that MVP over LeBron, they're going to say no.
Yeah, it's real. Like, again, yeah, we look back at it and being like, oh yeah, LeBron was the most valuable player for all these years and he never won the award. We look at that now and we know that. Now it's just like, I view this as almost the equivalent of giving LeBron that award then. Instead, so when we look back at it, be like, because like Seth Curry would be like the second best player on the Nuggets right now. James Harden would definitely be the second best player. Maxey would be the second best player. Tobias Harris might be the second best player on the Nuggets right now. Like the infrastructure Jokic is working is just
but wait a second,
bad.
but you can't talk about the infrastructure. He didn't have his second best player all fucking season.
Right.
Did Joel Embiid? But I'm saying you're saying that about Jokic. Okay. Yeah. So you guys want to make this environment like make it seem like this was like this weird. How many games did the second best player, a guy that was up for defensive player of the year, was a 3-time All-Star and he's only 25. How many games did Ben Simmons played this year?
0.
Ben Simmons not playing is definitely a big deal, but it doesn't change the fact that Embiid's the team around him was significantly better.
It was
don't
still
need to worry about second or third best. Who's playing?
But I understand that. But it's also the impact of having to raise your level because you don't have the setup guy, because you don't have that number one defensive guy. You lost your point guard, the guy. So now he had to take on more responsibility. So we make it seem like, oh, he had 2 guys hurt and look at what he did. Well, this guy had the second best player on his team hurt. Yes, his team is better with Tobias. Tyrese Maxey is a development guy. So no one knew Tyrese Maxey was going to come into the season and play this way. It was really looking like Joel Embiid. And if Tyrese Maxey would have had averaged 12 points a game this year, everyone would have been like, that's a good year for the young players getting better. But he had a big jump because of better opportunity. So all of the toxic stuff that he had to deal with the drama and the BS and all of that stuff, all of having to deal with that, and he put together leading the league in scoring, 40 in 10 games, all of these things he put together. So I'm saying is that we can't just use that narrative for Jokic and say, look at what he accomplished without his 2 best players. And it's like, well, Joel Embiid also was missing a player that, in my opinion, if Ben Simmons was playing at his peak, he's been an all-star. They're not missing any all-stars on, correct me if I'm wrong, are they missing any all-stars on Denver?
No, but the infrastructure
and Jamal
is still better.
Ben Simmons, I don't think Ben Simmons would have been an all-star this year, though.
No, if Ben Simmons would have done every single, they were the number 1 seed the year before. They were the number 1 seed the year before, and he was an all-star.
They were.
Yeah,
but also we wouldn't be talking about like how little help Jokic had if he also happened to have Tyrese Maxey and Tobias Harris and James Harden for half a year. Like there's only so much, I'm missing my second best option, but also he got traded in the middle of the year for James Harden.
But it was also a bunch of bullshit that came with it that those guys didn't have anything to do as players and teams. I'm not trying to make an argument against Jokic. I'm making an argument for Joel Embiid. And that's one thing that I always try and make clear because I think Jokic is deserving. I think Giannis, if you want to talk about it, Giannis is proven to be the best player in the world for the next probably 10 years. And part of the reason is he was getting voter fatigue. People didn't want to vote for him this year because he's always going to be judged against his prior years. His prior years is how they're going to judge him. Is that fair? No. Because statistically, in the better conference, they finished third.
Third.
Yes.
Yeah. So he should have probably be a little bit more in the higher conversations, because offensively and defensively, the things that he does is probably more impactful. But you're going to say, oh, he had all of his squad. And it's like, when does that start counting against you? When did having your whole entire voting squad like now become a part of like the normal thing?
It's not that right. It's the same. I'm making an argument for Jokic, not against Giannis. So it's not that Giannis having, Middleton and Holiday is going against him.
It sounds like it. Because you can't go and say, well, those guys would be the best player. It's like, no. Now we're changing. Now you're starting to make an argument against instead of for.
Well, you could say the argument for Jokic is he just had better numbers.
I think we're getting to a point where
Blaiden, we're going to keep arguing. We're going to keep arguing. We're going to keep arguing nonstop. No, I love you guys, but I finish it. I have to run, but I have to run soon. But we can definitely finish this argument. I love it.
Let's go. We got to talk about two more series. How about
I was thinking we could argue about this forever until you have to leave, but I think it'd be better for the people if we talked about these other.
Sorry, guys. We're sorry.
I'm sure they all loved it. But like Suns Mavericks, obviously Suns played last night, beat the Mavericks in a game that I think ended a little bit closer than the like actual game would indicate. Do you think the Suns? Let's see, and then it's Warriors Grizzlies. Do you think it's safe to assume that the Grizzlies and the Suns and the Warriors are winning these series? Do you think that's a safe assumption?
If everyone stays healthy and everyone plays, to their capability, yes. Minnesota was down 3 different times going into the fourth, right? They were down 3 different times going into the fourth. Do you know what the Suns' record is going into the fourth with a lead?
51-0.
Thank you. The further you go, you can't have these mental lapses, these defensive lapses, these offensive lapses, these silly fouls, these mistakes, because the better you go, the better teams make you pay for it. 50-0. That those bad boys are.
Yeah.
50-0. So that
51 now.
51 and 51. So I'm just saying. So yes, I do think those are the 2 teams that I think we will see for different reasons if everyone stays healthy.
Who would you take?
Even if everyone doesn't stay healthy, without Booker, I mean, Paul went 14 for 14.
Yeah,
that was crazy.
And they got to win against
their depth. The Suns, I'm a Suns. Their depth is ridiculous. But who would you take in a series, Warriors or Suns? Assuming, sorry, Grizzlies fans, I'm sorry that we're writing you off like this.
I would take Suns. I would take Suns in 7.
Okay.
So Suns in 6, because if it went 7. If it wins 7, I would not want to bet against the Warriors.
Theo's the only man ever to bet against his team.
I love betting. There's nothing I love more than betting against my own team, because I'm either right or I don't give a shit.
Me and you, Theo, that's how I always bet. I bet against my heart. I bet against my heart. So either way, I'm happy.
Either way, I'm right. And I also think like there's so many Warriors versus Bucks like final, like so many, not Warriors, Suns versus Bucks repeats. Like half the brackets I saw, that was the pick. So it's like, and the Warriors could really win. Like the amount of people who picked the Warriors compared to like the odds that it's happened is also, I thought, was a little bit out of whack. So I have got the Warriors winning that. I like pools coming out also as well. Like I also, not only do I love betting against my own team, the Suns legitimately do terrify me, and pool legitimately terrifies me. And I think like the way they've looked, I think they're winning. I think they're winning it all, sadly, as much as I hate to say it. That's my last thing. I think if we got to wrap it up is that series, because I think that's what everybody's kind of looking forward to, or maybe looking past this round for.
It's going to be a fun one. I don't know who wins, though.
I don't either.
Ja is.
Ja is interesting.
You don't see it, Blaiden. You don't see it. but guys, I do have to run. I got to go pick up my kids. It's trash.
All right.
School's getting
We'll wrap things up. Thank you all for tuning in. We do appreciate Richard Jefferson coming on. So here on this show, we do have like these nicknames. So whenever I outro, it's always Theo is Bird Boy, Matt's Corn Boy, I'm Lemon Boy.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're gonna outro you with.
Let's go.
We're gonna outro you with a nickname.
Let's go.
Just to get you some money.
I want to be a part of the crew. I want to be a part. I want to be a part of the group.
He's part of the crew. So, as always, don't miss out on all the great content coming away on all platforms. From Corn Boy, Bird Boy, Egg Boy, and Lemon Boy, we will catch you all on the Flippity Flop.